emulators with emulators.
Android emulators for PC.
Emulators are basic.
I'm pretty sure most of y'all have played video games, or at least watched someone in your family play them, or I've seen people play it online. But not everyone has had access to every game. There are a lot of games that people know about, like games they've seen clips of, and games they heard people talk about but never actually played them themselves. And a lot of the time it's not because they didn't want to, but it's because they couldn't. Maybe they just didn't have the right console, or the game was too old, or it just wasn't available anymore. And that's something I started to realize when I went back and played games like Pokémon FireRed, Ultra Violet, or Yoshi's Island. These are games that at one point were locked behind specific systems like the Game Boy Advance or older Nintendo consoles. But now they're way easier to access, but not because they were re-released or something, but because of emulators. And in this video, I want to talk about the beauty of emulation, where it came from, how it impacts gaming today, and why it matters more than what people think. Back then, playing a game wasn't just about wanting to play it, but you had to own the system. If you wanted to play a Pokemon game, you needed something like a Game Boy Advance. If you wanted to play older Nintendo titles, you needed the original hardware, or you just missed out completely. And over time, these systems became harder to find. Cartridges got more expensive, consoles stopped working, and some of these games just became rare to see. So even though interest in these games never really went away, access to them did. That's where emulation comes in. Emulation is basically software that recreates old consoles. Not just the games, but the actual systems themselves. Programs like Visual Boy Advance allow modern devices to run games that were originally made for completely different hardware. So instead of actually needing a Game Boy Advance, you could just load up a game and play it. And it's not limited to just one system either. There are emulators for a huge range of consoles, which means a huge range of games are now accessible in ways that they never were before. But emulation didn't start as something mainstream. It started with small communities. As older consoles started to fade out, people realized something. These games weren't being preserved. So companies like Nintendo weren't always releasing older titles, and some games were just being left behind. So people took it into their own hands. They studied how these systems worked, recreated them through code, and built ways to keep these games alive. It wasn't perfect originally, but it worked. And over time, it grew into something much bigger. What makes emulation special isn't just that it works, but it's what it allows. It removes barriers, and games that used to require specific hardware, money, or timing are now available to almost anyone. You could go back and play games you missed. You could experience games that came out before you were even born. And in some cases, you could even play new versions of old games. That's where things like ROM hacks come in. Games like Pokémon Ultra Violet take something familiar and turn it into something completely different. Same base game, but a brand new experience, and that's something that wouldn't really exist without emulation. But at the same time, emulation isn't perfect. There's always been a debate around it. Some people see it as preservation, but others see it as piracy. Because while emulators themselves are legal, the games used with them can be a different story. And companies have made it clear that they don't always support it. But that brings up a bigger question. If a game isn't being sold anymore and there's no official way to play it, then what's supposed to happen to it? Does it disappear? Or does the community keep it alive? Today, emulation makes a bigger role than most people realize. It keeps older games relevant. It introduces new players to classic titles. It makes sure that gaming history doesn't just fade away. Because without it, a lot of these experiences would be gone. Not remembered, not played, just gone. The beauty of emulation isn't that it replaces consoles, and it's not that it makes things easier, it's that it gives people access to something that they've never had in the first place. It keeps games alive, long after they were supposed to be forgotten. I know I'm back with another one of these videos, and this may be a little bit unplanned, but again, I just wanted to talk about this because for me, being able to go back and play games like FireRed or Yoshi's Island, it's not just about playing a game, but it's also experiencing something that I might have missed. My parents and maybe yours might talk about the video games of their time and how different or simple they were to games of ours. And it doesn't disrespect the older games or the newer games, but it sometimes makes newer gamers see things in a different perspective than what they were raised on. But thank y'all for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments if y'all want to see more videos like this, and please consider subscribing if you're new, and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. And until next time, I'll see y'all later.